Welcome to my series, Unveiling the Secrets of Executive Presence. As a certified image professional and in my business Style for Life, I have the good fortune to work with some of Australia's most influential women who are committed to making a difference in the world and are not afraid to showcase their strength and courage with a powerful visual brand. These women appreciate that an authentic image makes them even more credible and confident and impressive than they sometimes appear on paper. But as an ambitious woman, the journey to the C-suite can be filled with insecurity, fear, judgment, and second-guessing all around whether your executive presence and gravitas is enough. But it is one of the most important skills for success in business, and it's also one of the most least understood, which is why I decided to start this series. So Unveiling the Secrets of Executive Presence provides insights into how to develop and use executive presence as a powerful tool for career advancement through interviews with the most accomplished senior executives in Australia. These women are highly respected leaders in their field who concur that executive presence is a skill that should be learned and mastered to make a very real difference, and they share how to use it to achieve success both personally and professionally, and what executive presence has meant for them. And today I have the pleasure of talking to Louise Baxter, Chief Executive Officer for Starlight Children's Foundation. Described as an inspiring and authentic leader, Louise has exceptional experience in both commercial and not-for-profit sectors. Appointed as Starlight's CEO in 2009, Louise has improved every metric across Starlight and is a champion for positivity, resilience, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Louise is passionate about organisational purpose, being key to delivering maximum impact through people, and has been successful in developing high-performing teams where change is embraced and innovation is embedded. To her credit, Starlight is consistently ranked as one of the most reputable and well-known charities in Australia and was named Employer of Choice in the Australian Business Awards in 2018. More recently, Louise has been named a finalist in the CEO Magazine Global Executive of the Year Awards for 2023. Her explanation of what Starlight is all about is simply described as, "What we do is so simple yet so powerful. Starlight brightens a seriously ill child's life in the darkest of times. Starlight transforms the hospital experience, connects children who are feeling isolated, and entertains, bringing fun, laughter, and joy." With so many other achievements, too many to mention, I would like to welcome Louise to the program, and I'm very eager to hear more. So, Louise, congratulations. I mean, you're 20 years now with Starlight.
Yes.
That is an amazing achievement.
Thank you. Yes, it's been wonderful, and I love every moment of what I do, and I think that's something that a point that I share with people regularly. Whenever you're in that moment of time and you're not loving it and you're not leaping out of bed every day to whatever role you have, then I think it's time for you to reconsider, and change can just be exactly what you need. And I often see people who stay in organisations too long, and they become disengaged. They often become quite negative, often try and drag other people into their negativity. And I always think, why do people do that? If they leave, they can flourish somewhere else. That organisation can get someone in that role that's a better fit and loves what they do. So it's a win-win all round. So yeah, I'm very much about, you have to be happy in what you're doing, and loving, and be challenged, because it's not, any senior role, it's never perfect, and there's always challenges. And actually, I think I'm a bit of, I think I'm one of those people that say, you had me at crisis. So I love the fact that sometimes you need to get your teeth into problem solving at a really high level and complex level. So I think that's something that I relish.
That's amazing. So just on the topic of executive presence, which is one that I think is largely misunderstood by a lot of people. And you know, in the work that you do, the organisations you have to deal with, the stakeholders you relate to and seek out for the work that you do. How important have you found this whole concept of executive presence to be? Because, you carry quite a bit of influence as well.
Mm. And you have to be aware of that. Sometimes I'm not aware that when I say things, people can hear them very loudly. And even if it's just a passing comment, sometimes people feel that that might be a directive, and it's often not, because I have lots of ideas that I might have, and I might say, what do you think about if we do this? And I have to sometimes put the caveat on it. I'm not necessarily suggesting that or saying we do it. I'm just really wanting your input as to what do you think about that? Is it good or it's bad? Probably a stupid idea. But, so giving people that room to know that they can have input, because when you are a senior person, people can hear you much more loudly than you realize.
That's a really interesting point, because often, yes, I mean, you're a very natural person. I can tell that straight away, that you're very candid and you want to talk openly about what you
Mm,
visually see and experience. And sometimes we don't often realize the value that other people are taking from that, and how much
absolutely.
they rely on your words and actions and behavior and everything else. So it's really interesting. So what strategies do you use to try and amplify that special gift that you've got? Because I do see it as a gift, particularly with
Mm.
all the achievements that you have gained.
Um, Sometimes it might be amplification, and sometimes it might be toning it down, because you have to also, what I try to add into um, how people see me, which is who I am, because you're right, I'm very much about authenticity, and there's not a different Louise that you get in different situations. I might think differently and have because if you're constantly thinking about who is your customer in this moment, who is going to be, interested in what you're saying, who are you impacting, if you constantly are thinking in their shoes, then it changes the way you might frame things. But what I say about that even is children do that from a young age. Children will share the same story differently to their friends than they do with their parents, their teacher, or their grandparents. And it's just kind of marketing 101. It's about who are you actually targeting this message towards, and that gives you. So if you're thinking about in their shoes, how are they going to hear this? What are they going to hear in those words? So I spend a lot of time thinking about my communication,
Mhm.
and I spend a lot of time thinking about my communication before I ever put pen to paper. So if I can use that old-fashioned term. So before I stop to write, um,
Yeah.
I always think about things. If I have speeches, I think about the structure of that speech. I'm thinking about who I'm speaking to. What are they going to be interested in? What are going to be the triggers for them to be engaged? So it's constantly thinking about your audience
Hmm.
and recognizing what you need to do. Back to that, sometimes people can hear me loudly and too loudly. So I need to give people a space and show that I'm vulnerable and that I definitely want the input to make a decision. And sometimes decisions change because environments change, the situation changes, and you need to. So you're never wedded to the one idea, an ideology, or whatever forever. So I think enabling people to have that freedom of space around. And, as a CEO, you need to give people freedom to fail, uh, because if you're not enabling people to fail, they're not really going to be innovating. They're not going to be innovating hard enough, because no one's going to try anything that's not going to work. And you don't want to be running an organization that's not doing that, because you learn 10 times as much from failures. It'd be wonderful if everything nailed it every time. That's simply never going to happen.
Mm.
And so, you don't want people fearful of, I won't try that because I'll fail and then I'll be in strife in any way, shape, or form. And as the leader, you have to be really aware. Somebody once said to me, as the leader, even if the world is going to hell in a handbag, from the moment you step out of your car, you are communicating to your team. Because people can see you walking into the building, etc. So if you're not looking confident, if you're not looking comfortable, people will see that. And especially when you are facing challenging times. We've all been through a time that started in March 2020 where nobody really knew what was going to happen, but we all had to imbue confidence in our teams that we had this. And we had to communicate to our teams to engage them. And one of the things that as a leader is if you don't communicate frequently with people and share the good and the bad, then people start to make stuff up. And how do you stop that kind of that corridor mythology that establishes itself in every organization? And when I first came into the CEO role, it was just post GFC, so another crisis, and which was impacting us terribly. And the team, there was all this stuff that I was hearing, white noise that I was hearing about things that were happening, and most of them were not true at all. And so, but people were fearful of these things. And so I established then a thing called CEO Connect. And I said to everyone, if you have any questions, ask them. Because if you have those questions, don't think it's a silly question. If you have that question, another 2, 5, 10, 20 people might have that same question. So please ask me that question. And my commitment to you is I will answer it to the whole organization within 24 hours. Now, that was amazing for what it flushed out of, things that we were hearing, the questions that were being asked. And you're able then to get on top of things, because when that white noise is kind of is there, and it's there, but you don't exactly know what it is, because sometimes you're not hearing everything, and the more senior you become, potentially the less you hear, and that's what I try to break down as well. But that meant that by establishing CEO Connect, people could ask questions and I would answer them. Now, we still have that in play, but I hardly get a question. And if I get a question in this day and age, it's usually, could you tell me what was your highlight from the recent conference we had? Or something. So it's completely flipped from a whole lot of negative chatter that was there to something that's hardly used, because I want people to be able to connect with me. And I do spend a lot of time being physically present. Well, now that I can, obviously, COVID was a time when we couldn't do that. And I had to then, COVID was exhausting from a communication to the team point of view.
It certainly was exhausting.
Yeah. So you're just trying to, because you're connecting, and while the technology is remarkable, it's still not the same as meeting someone in person.
No,
and so, you were in calls where you were looking to see. I think the person in the top right corner of that call we just had wasn't on board, or is doing it tough, or there's something it's probably not appropriate for me, but I'd contact the manager. Can the manager call them and just check in?
So observation you were making on those group calls, or did you have someone, sort of who was doing that on your behalf as well?
I know. I think we all did it, because we have quite a strong culture here of care, self-care, which is absolutely the priority. Because if you're not caring for yourself, especially in any leadership role, and we're all leaders, we move in and out of leadership roles on projects, on teams, whatever. Then you have no energy to care for anyone else. And so as leaders, that self-care was such a priority during COVID, and always is. And then when you have that self-care, then you can care for your team members. So sometimes it might be me. It would depend who was in the meeting room. Sometimes I'd call the manager and they'd say, I noted that, already called, which was generally the case. Or, depending on who it was, they would do that. But yeah, very much a sense. And we were sharing with people and saying, if you notice someone who doesn't seem to be their self, please check in, because there are a lot of people who live alone, who then, the isolation of COVID was just extreme. So yeah, I think that's very important.
a lot of interesting things that you said there, and I love the fact that you promote self-care, and it's very true. And look, asking questions, and I say that to many women when I'm on a forum and there's women there, I say, please ask questions, because someone might have exactly the same question but doesn't have the confidence to actually ask
Yeah,
it. You could actually be helping out somebody else by asking that question. And
exactly.
it may make you feel vulnerable and it may make you look stupid, but it's just a question. And
Mm.
until we answer it, how can we solve the problem?
You're absolutely right. And I think, that vulnerability piece, there was someone recently who came out and said that this is ridiculous and leaders shouldn't show vulnerability. I completely disagree. We're human beings. We're all vulnerable. And when people can see, and sometimes we don't, well, you're never going to be doing everything right all the time. That's just not going to happen, because I am also a committed anti-perfectionist, and I think that that helps as well, because uh, perfectionists are. I have this joke, and I always say, if I'm in an interview and someone proudly shares this with me, I feel like in that moment I need Graham Norton's big red chair, and I just need
Oh,
to
I
flip
did
them
read
straight.
that on the LinkedIn profile actually. I thought that was hilarious.
I can flip them straight out. Um, so because perfectionists, um, it's another way to procrastinate. It means that people are focused on getting something from 95 to, in their mind, 120%, when actually we need to be moving forward. And I use the terminology 70% and out. Now that probably means people go to 80 or 90%. And I've used a larger number because I used to say 80% and out, and I found that I was still getting close to 100. But it's like, it's better to get things happening and to progress, and people will accept if it's not 100% perfect. But if it's 95%, that's great. So let's just say 70% and out to people, and that tries to bring people back to move forward and get things done.
Yeah, it's like the old Nike saying, just do it. It
Yeah,
doesn't have
exactly. I
to be
love the Nike saying.
perfect. Just start. Just do something to actually get it going. So, have you found that there's in your area of expertise and in your space there are misconceptions about the concept of executive presence? And I mean, I think you've probably almost answered that question in terms of how would people overcome that. And I think it's really just about getting started and about having a go and contributing where they feel they can, and not feeling uncomfortable as to whether it's going to be right or wrong.
Yeah, and I think it's all of those things. And as you build your experience, you learn those things. And I think we've also changed generationally, because I come from uh, a place where uh, probably perfectionism was more a thing when I was coming through the ranks,
Mm.
and exactly how you looked. There was virtually a uniform for all us women, um, back then, and we all had the shoulder pads and the pericut suits on it. So we all looked exactly the same.
Mm.
And I think that as with diversity of experience from people in different sectors, I think the technology sector, where you have lots of incredibly smart people working, but they had a more casual, because originally they were kind of, it's probably the back room creating all those codes, and then it's like, no, that's such a powerful tool. And then we've seen the rise of tech, and so they came through with, well, they probably all look the same too, but they've now diversified how we can look, so we can look a bit like that and a bit like this, and it's not a statement anymore about who you are, because I think people are really interested in uh, what you say, how you think, how you act, your leadership decisions, the way you treat people. That's more the focus. And that's a much better place for us to be than we
It
were when
is.
I started.
I was reading an article just recently, actually, that was talking about sort of where is, what does executive presence mean now to people? And interestingly enough, the whole appearance side of that is still playing an important role, that it still does contribute to a person's overall, first impression of you.
Yeah.
So But
I think first impressions, I would never suggest anyone, and there's still inappropriate ways to dress for
really
the business environment. And I always say to people, dress for the role you want, not necessarily the role you currently have. So there are some things about that, but it's a very different world than it was when I first was a junior person in a corporate organisation.
It has changed considerably, and I think the pandemic had a profound impact on all of this. And it's muddied the waters incredibly. I think they're starting to come out a little bit, and they're starting to be a little bit more, boundary formation again as to what people should be wearing to specific types of meetings and events and in certain industries. But yes, you mentioned the IT industry and that whole Silicon Valley, they did have their uniform and that stuck. But the other thing that's come out of COVID is the whole sneaker revolution too. Where,
I have mine on today.
I have mine on today too.
So it's and I think that's a good thing. We'll probably all have in the future much better feet as a result.
Yeah, well that's true. My days of running around in heels all day are definitely gone.
Definitely.
Look, I think that the whole concept of comfort, and in your space particularly, I wanted to ask you this question because I know children relate very differently to different colours. So have you found that, have you looked at as a strategy, employing that concept of wearing different colours and you mentioned different audiences?
Yes, yeah, we have actually. Interestingly, and our Starlight Express rooms are not purple and yellow because what we use is the latest research into the therapeutic benefits of design, the built design, the built environment. And so that's about natural light. It's about a biophilia, which is getting greenery, trees, etc., into the environment. Even if you can't get a real tree, we have some rooms that the light's coming in through a space, but hospitals have a lot of surface area, so it might be looking over a surface area, and we have beautiful green vines that are decals that go up all the windows. So that's how we address the biophilia requirement there. We have wood, natural woods, and so it's that lime green, it's the wood. We even have grass, we have pebble lino that you can, the kids can see. Kids will look like they're bending down to pick up a pebble that's in a riverbank, but it's actually lino. So we use all these things that are more sensory and engage the children. But the purple and yellow are fun, happy. Both of those colours are positive, happy colours. And so that's a good thing for us to know. And I must admit, when we first went into remote Indigenous communities, I was thinking, is our Captain Starlight costume of the purple and yellow silver cape going to be right for that environment? And will we need to change that in any way, shape or form? When you go into a remote Indigenous community, bright colours are the order of the day. And so those bright colours really worked in that environment. And also the mythology of Captain Starlight, because Captain Starlights all come from planet Starlight and they come to planet Earth every day in an invisible rocket ship. And they have the charter, and their mission on Earth is to put smiles on the faces of sick kids. And so they land their invisible rocket ship on the roof of all the children's hospitals. And little young children can recite this for you and tell you exactly where Captain Starlight comes from. That mythology also worked in remote communities, because to have somebody that actually comes from the sky and comes to the earth, that fits as well. So yes, we're constantly looking for what works in this space, and our rooms are neutral. They are wood. They have, we have grass, we have pebbles, we have, as I said, the biophilia, we have all that. So it's a very neutral space, and it also can be a space for children who are very young, right through to children who are 18. So we didn't want it to look like a preschool kindergarten or anything. And so that's why it was really important for us to get that really right.
Mm.
And at the moment we're designing an outdoor space in Alice Springs that's just adjacent to our Starlight Express room, and we're putting um, around a seat that's around a tree. We're painting a water hole on that, and the footprints of the animals that would be in that region coming to the water hole. So they're just painted on the cement, but things like that that are really engaging and appropriate.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I can see how, the work that you do is so engaging for you and so uplifting and does bring you joy.
Well, the thing about it, Julie, is uh, I love a challenge and I love growth. And the thing about what we're doing at Starlight is that it's very simple, and it is about the fact that we give children who are seriously ill, who sometimes have their childhood stolen by the illness and the treatment and the surgeries and the hospitalization, back that chance to be a child. And this improves the health outcomes. And as clinicians start to see the fact that happiness can actually change the way a health treatment uh, actually goes in terms of the what happens within that actual treatment space on that day, and then the child's ability to come back and return because they feel comfortable and happy and they're engaged with their healthcare. And if we can, transform that one healthcare experience, and then that engages children in their future healthcare, that changes everything. And as clinicians see the benefit of this and what we do, we're now being used in more and more spaces, like supporting children in at-home palliative care, which a clinician came to us and said, we can treat their clinical needs, but we can't engage with the family the way you do. Can we work together? So we started that in one hospital, and then it grows. So the more and more we recognize that the mind is completely connected to how we are physically, and that those two things are not two separate things. You can't treat one without the other. The more people are recognizing this, and we actually train our whole team in positive psychology so that they can support their own well-being and resilience. So we all have the tools to do this, and I think that it's the authenticity of our organisation and every person within the organisation that's key.
Mm. I think everything you said there is so true. The power of the mind is something that we still don't fully understand, but can completely change the outcomes of whatever we're going through. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's amazing the work that you're doing. So you mentioned before about how you used to dress for work, that women had a uniform, and that's sort of changed quite considerably, particularly over COVID, and for women too, because we were having to wear so many different hats and from one position to another position. So what's the biggest shift you think you've seen in how women present themselves now as compared to pre-COVID and the work that you do?
Well,
Because
I'll
you,
take us back even further. I mean, and this is the same theme, but it's probably a little different. I think, and we're an organisation that's always been flexible because we're about families. We have a lot of women who work for us who have families, so we're about bringing families together, and we've recognised that. So the thing about COVID was we were already working flexibly, and where there were a lot of organisations that had to work out how their teams would work from home, we had already knew that. But if I go back to, when I had my children, you kind of needed to not talk about the fact that you were pregnant. And if you ever mentioned that you couldn't have a meeting at that time once you returned to work because you needed to go and breastfeed, that was just met with horror. Don't say that stuff. I don't want to hear that. Even if people were allowing it to happen or in their environment. But what we've changed is, that has changed dramatically, and so it should have, and before COVID. But I think what COVID also did was there were a lot of people. I've always believed that people can work from anywhere because I travel a lot. I connect with board members earlier in the morning. Then I might do some work from home. Then I come into the office, or we call it the hub. I can work in an airport lounge, in a hotel, in an office in another state. So why would anyone question anyone that they can't work? You will see the output. But I think there were still team members and managers within Starlight who were wanting to see their team members in the door at 9 and out at 5. COVID has changed that so dramatically, and that's helped women because that means that women don't need to have any of that guilt that sometimes you might have had. I know I had that, oh my goodness, I've got to be in this major meeting at this time, but I want to do tuck shop today. And so you were doing all those things, but kind of hiding one from the other. I think it means it's all really open now, and that's fantastic. It's fantastic for the mothers, the fathers who work for us, for the children and the families, and everyone is achieving their metrics. They're all hitting their targets, so it hasn't changed anything. But we potentially have, happier teams. That being the case, I think there's still a need for us to be together a significant amount of our time. So, but it's fine for someone to be in the hub and then leave at 3 because they pick up their child and then go back online at 6 p.m. and do other work from 6 to 8, if that's what suits them. But I think what we can't have is a whole group of people who work from home who are not connected with the other team members. And I think this is important for a number of reasons. And a lot of these people are women, I think. So I heard Danielle Wood, who's the new head of the Productivity Commission, talk about her concern that working from home establishes a ghetto for women. And I think we've got to be really cautious of that because we need to have women. It's great to have this flexibility, but flexibility is a two-way street. And we also need those women sharing their amazing expertise to the next generation of workers in our hubs and offices. We need to have that spark that you get that's sometimes not in a set meeting, but it's in the kitchen or it's walking down a corridor.
Or a photocopier or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So we need to make sure we can still have those moments. And collaborations and, innovation sessions all works better with face-to-face contact. Businesses are all about relationships and relationships. Yes, you can maintain them for a certain amount of time by phone or doing something like this, but ultimately it's that face-to-face when you actually sit down with someone. That's when you build those relationships, and businesses are about relationships. So what's changed is people are now accepting of this, but I think we shouldn't let the pendulum go too far, and we need to recognize that we do need to have face-to-face time in a flexible work environment, and flexibility is two ways.
Totally. Well, I know just with the work that I do, Louise, over COVID, there was a lot of this going on. And, business was still happening. But at the time when we were able to have face-to-face time with clients, I had clients flying in from interstate because they knew they could spend time with me to
Yes.
actually do physical wardrobing, physical, trying on, coordinating, playing with clothes, because it's very tactile and
Yes.
it's visual. And it was just that connection. It was, being able to eyeball the other person, smile, have a laugh, the touch,
Yes. Yeah.
because there's a lot of
Because
hands-on as well.
what sets us apart as human beings is exactly that. The fact that we want to see people, touch people, laugh with people, there's things that you don't necessarily pick up on a video call. For all the value that it does add, and the fact that it can replace many face-to-face meetings, we still need that. So I think we need to get that balance of flexibility is two ways, and we want, and now post-COVID, I think families, it's no longer hidden. It's acceptable that that's something that people need to do and that it improves their lives. And if that improves their lives, that makes them better team members. So if they can do all that, but I think we still need that, and we don't want to be prescriptive about that. We speak about our offices as a magnet, not mandate.
I think the hardest thing for a lot of people in getting back to the whole face-to-face scenario is logistics. How far are they from the place where they need to travel to have the face-to-face contact? Because I find sometimes that can be, a barrier to actually facilitating that. So people have to get used to the idea that, oh, okay, we want a face-to-face meeting, so I have to allow an hour to travel there and an hour to get back. So how do I make up that time in between? So I think people have found other things to do in that time that they would otherwise have been sitting in the car or on the train or
Yeah.
they, whatever means of transport they use to get there. So and it's an adjustment after COVID. I think
Yeah.
people are just sorting themselves out and trying to find out what it all means to them now and how they're going to get the best results.
There was one organisation that said they were mandating, and I thought this was interesting because there are people who have percentages and all that kind of stuff. But one was saying all the new people, they're kind of under 2 years, and then all the senior team had to be in because they wanted, it's that transfer of knowledge and learning. And 70% of learning is on the job. We knew that. And I'm not suggesting at all that you can't learn using technology, but there is also learning that you really only pick up when you are face to face and you see the way people move, act, react, and that's important.
True. So you've been at Starlight for 20 years now.
Mm-hmm.
Remarkable achievement. Where do you see yourself in 5 years' time?
I think that I'm someone who can't see themselves not working. So I don't think that there's a retirement play in hand. But I also recognise that at some point it's going to be necessary for me to step away and to have fresh eyes come in because that's really important. And I would do that at a time where I have a few projects that I'm working on that are absolute, I think, are critical, that really set Starlight up for some long-term success. And so, I would hope that those are completed by the time I, choose to make some changes. But I would think I would always be continuing to work to add value. I'm very much about look, I've moved between the corporate world and this profit for purpose world twice. So, it's not out of the question that a future for me might be a kind of back to a more corporate world. But I'm interested in growth. I'm continually interested in growth for the organisation I'm part of and also for myself because, it's lifelong learning. And, I love the fact that, what you can learn from some of the younger people in the organisation is just amazing if you're open to that. And I think that's also a big change. I think a long time ago, there was this sense that you learned more and, as you became more senior, whereas I'm like, you know what? I think now as you become more senior, you realize how much you don't know, which is the thing that actually helps you to be a better leader.
I think we were having a conversation last night about how much has changed in the business world and in technology over the last, since we've been, in our own businesses, which is enormous in our lifetimes. There's been enormous change, but it's the young ones that they grow up with it. So they, even though we know about it, they know more because they've actually become really comfortable with it at a much earlier age. So yes, there's a lot we can learn from them, but equally there's a lot they can learn from us, about resilience and about confidence and just staying true to task,
Yeah, but there's also things that they can teach us that are outside the realm of technology. They are the younger people coming through are so different when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And they demand that and that's good and right and what should be, and they don't have any of the biases that I think existed when I was starting out. Not necessarily that I held at all, but that you could see around you in the world. So I think that they have a lovely, fresh approach. I think they're champions for our environment, and we should be listening to them from that because, they're just going to be shaking their heads and saying, what did these people do? They knew all this. They had the science was there. Why did they not act? And so I think there's a lot we can learn from them from a technology point of view and also generally.
Yes. Look, I think there's lots of lessons that we've all learned and are still yet to learn, even from the past 3 years, from an environmental perspective, technology perspective. AI is one of those things which is just taking over everything.
Yes.
So yes, it's a very interesting time, and I think my children will probably look back upon this in, 20, 30, 40, 50 years time and think, my goodness, what was all that about?
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, we were laughing about Y2K the other night.
Oh, yes, I remember that. Everyone thought the world was going to end.
We thought the world was going to, people were
I know,
stockpiling food and, and
everyone was
nothing.
buying water and,
It clicked over and nothing.
nothing. Yes, I do remember that. Incredible how times have changed. Louise, thank you so much for giving me your time this morning. I know you're an incredibly busy woman, and keep doing what you're doing. I think it's an amazing charity, an amazing organisation and purpose. What you're doing and very much needed. And
Well, thank you, Julie, and I'm sure you will continue to share your knowledge on the area of of gravitas. Really, it's about, and so yeah, so well done.